Hello everyone and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 117. I am thrilled that you're here and I hope that you've had a lovely autumnal week after my last episode. I'm joining you today from my bed with my duvet on, in a dressing gown, with hair that hasn't been washed for 4 days now because I am being struck down with just a bad cold, but I'm very soft these days. So, excuse my voice, and if I start sneezing halfway through, I shall try my best to edit it out. So, thank you to those of you who have come and supported me on my new YouTube channel by subscribing, liking. Oh, who's this? Oh, it's my dad. Hang on, let me put my phone on silent. Okay, yes, thank you to those of you who have come and supported me on the YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please come and follow me on YouTube, where I'm going to be posting additional content over on that channel. So today, what I want to talk to you about is the expectation effect, which is very much the law of assumption. And I can guarantee that this is affecting you and the people that you know negatively in some areas of life, and you probably don't even realise it. So we're going to talk about how we can fix that and how it might be coming up in your life. Now, the definition of the expectation effect is what doctors and scientists would refer to as a psychological phenomenon, where our expectations about a situation, outcome, or behaviour influence our experience or our performance. Does this sound familiar, guys? Yes, it fucking does, because what we're talking about is indeed exactly the fucking same as the law of assumption. But for those people out there who are struggling to accept that they are the creator of their reality, because consciousness is the one and only reality, you could also describe it as this expectation effect. And I've actually just bought a book called The Expectation Effect that I'm going to read, but I haven't read it yet, so I'll let you know what I think of it. Now, I've chosen to talk about this because it's been a while since I have recorded an episode which is a little bit more like science-based, evidence-based, with some kind of scientific backing for the concepts that I teach. So I thought it would be a nice little boost for everyone who is struggling to have faith in their own power. What I teach is so normal to me now, but I completely understand that when I'm telling you that thinking new thoughts will change your whole life and everything in it, it is difficult to accept when the 3D seems so real. So for this week, I'm going to be referring to it as the expectation effect, and we're going to stick to that kind of scientific thread and examples of how this actually works in real life. So I'm going to outline the key aspects of this expectation effect. So this is like a well-known phenomenon. I'm doing air quotes because we know that it's just law of assumption. But the first aspect is the influence of our beliefs on our performance. So if someone believes that something is true about themselves, this belief is going to shape that person's behaviour. It's going to pull their attention in certain directions. It's going to affect their natural drive, and all of those things will be geared towards the expectation that they have about themselves. So it's actually going to control their behaviour and their performance. So I'm going to give you an example of how this might play out in a classroom for all of my teacher friends who are listening out there. If you've ever been in a pupil progress meeting recently and you've come out wondering how the fuck you are supposed to get that working towards child to greater depth by the summer term, I'm going to tell you. So if you assume that that child is gifted at something in some way, you will then speak to them and act towards them with that expectation that they are gifted. You might even share it with the child and really let them know that you believe that they are gifted. A set of beliefs is then going to form in that child's subconscious mind, which will play out in their and your, of course, because you're a part of this, you're the main part of this reality. So that will look like the child having a different attitude towards the work, a different level of focus, a different level of drive, a different motivation, and ultimately, because of all of those things, those behaviours that are affecting their performance, they're going to experience a different outcome, all because they expected to be able to perform highly. And I want to share this little story that I heard quite a while ago now, but this really proves this to be true. So this is a true story. There was a man, and I think his name was Ron. I think he was called Ron Hall, but I couldn't find the definite story online. I think I read it in a book once. So Ron, we'll call him Ron, has always struggled at school. He was always at the bottom of the class. He was doing easier work than other children. The expectations of him were continually low. So his teachers, his parents, his peers, they all expected very little from him. And so he did too. So after he'd had his full school career in this same pattern, he took an exam which was the same one as his peers. So it was unusual because usually he would be given like easier work, but on this occasion he had to take an exam that was the same one as everybody else. And when the teacher marked it, she delivered the results to him very excitedly because she realised that he had had the highest score in his class, right? So obviously they were both very surprised by this because this lad at the time had struggled all through school and just been scraping by, and that's what everybody expected from him. But in that moment where his teacher actually showed him the evidence, showed him the marking of him being smarter than the rest of the kids in his class as like a teenager, Ron developed a brand new set of beliefs and expectations in that moment, and they were the opposite to what he had before. So from that point onwards, that affected Ron's behaviour massively. It changed his whole performance. He became more focused, he became more ambitious, more studious, and he went on to lead a very successful life. Now, later down the line, somehow, and I don't know how because I can't remember exactly now, but I seem to remember it was something to do with a letter being posted from the school records department or something like that. But basically he discovered as a fully grown adult who had had a successful career since that moment when he got the best test results in the class, that the results were in error and they'd actually scored very low on the test paper. But the knock-on effect of that change in expectation of his performance, because he had this like very unusual and very high score, was life-changing, all from that one little event. Now, this also works in the opposite way. And this isn't just relating to education, this is relating to anything in your life. I'm just using this as an example. But when you have, as a teacher, when the school year comes to an end, you have a meeting with the next teacher. So you pass up all the information. It's a pass up meeting. You go through each child in the class and you tell the next teacher about them, about what the levels are, like where they're up to, what they're good at, what they're struggling with, what the behaviour's like, all of this stuff, right? So that's just very common practice to pass up that information. So if you've got a teacher who, let's say for instance, has maybe taken a bit of a dislike to a particular child, I'm not saying that the child is aware of that, but this teacher might say, yeah, this kid's an absolute pain in the ass, or he's lazy, or he can't concentrate, or he's very low ability, he's not going to be able to do anything. That negatively impacts the next teacher and the child. So this new teacher now has developed a set of beliefs about this child, right? Let's call him Dennis, because I don't know anybody called Dennis. Right, so Dennis has now got this set of beliefs that comes with him before the new teacher has even interacted with him. So therefore, the new teacher will communicate those beliefs to Dennis, not necessarily through words, hopefully not, but through that teacher's behaviour towards him. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Oh my God. I have never in my life have I seen a soundbite look like that. I do apologise if I've just burst your eardrums, but anyway, we're going to carry on. So, what was I saying? Right, so Dennis now will... No, the new teacher is now going to communicate this set of beliefs to Dennis, right? They're not going to do it through the words, because otherwise they'd be a really shit teacher. But they will naturally do that through the behaviours towards them. So it might be like sitting him right at the front of the class, pulling him up for chatting a lot more than other kids, rewarding him more frequently for things that are just a standard for the other kids, giving him easier work before you've even tried him with the harder stuff, getting the teaching assistant to always sit close to him and keep an eye on him. So therefore, Dennis picks up on your expectations, the teacher's expectations of the child, and expects the same outcomes for himself, and that's what has to play out, because we know that's how the law of assumption works, or in this case, the expectation effect. So, for example, like right now in my life, I am going through an identity shift. Well, I think I've come through it actually. And it's intentional. I'm rewiring a belief that I've had for a very, very long time. And that belief was that it's really hard for me to learn new things and that I will inevitably fuck things up. That's the two things that I have found through journaling are sort of playing out in my life, among other things. But that's impacted me massively. For example, I had 56 driving lessons, guys, 56 driving lessons, and 4 driving tests. And the one that I actually passed, I went round a roundabout the wrong way. I think the driving instructor was just terrified of getting back in with me, so he passed me. But that's because I expected that it would be hard for me to learn, and that changed my behaviour. So when I look back now, I made no effort to even attempt to learn. I spent the whole time gossiping with my driving instructor when I was 17. I was just like looking forward to it like a social thing. I never thought, oh, I can actually learn something in this lesson. It was just purely through the length of time that I'd been doing the lessons that he eventually decided to put me in for the test. And once I passed my test, where I'd gone round the roundabout the wrong way, I then crashed my car about, I don't know, 2 days, 3 days after passing that 4th test. And it then confirmed my belief. It became a feedback loop, which we'll talk about later, that it was really hard for me to learn something and that I inevitably would fuck things up. So over the course of the following 2 years, I continued to crash my car another 7 times. I had 8 crashes in my first 2 years of driving. And I don't do that now because I did manage to shift that specific belief a long time ago about driving. It would be bizarre for me to crash my car now. I'm a good driver. I expect that I'm always going to reach my destination unscathed, and so I do. But at that time, I expected that it was really hard for me to learn, so it took me a really long time to learn how to drive my car, and that I would inevitably fuck things up, and therefore I used to crash my car all the fucking time. I cannot tell you how many times this cycle repeated in my life, not just to do with driving, and this is it. It doesn't just play out in one area of life, it plays out in all of them. So, well, for example, when I got a job at an insurance claims company called Premex, shout out to Premex listeners, I literally fell asleep during my training. So I had like 2 training days and I fell asleep because I believed that it was really hard for me to learn. So it made me physically exhausted and I actually slipped off my hand. I was like leaning on my arm and I fell asleep and I was so embarrassed. I had to pretend that I'd passed out and go home sick because I was so embarrassed that I'd fallen asleep, as you would be. It was like a fucking narcolepsy. And I had to pretend that I'd passed out and I went home sick, and it wasn't. It was just because I believed it was so hard for me to learn that it actually created a response in my body where I fell asleep to avoid it. And then I continued throughout my very short-lived career, about 2 years, to make big, major mistakes that most people would never make once. And now, when I think back to that job, it was so basic. I was literally taking information off a sheet and putting it into a form. That's all I was doing. It was just a data inputting job. And I worked there for 2 years. And in that time, I never got past the point of having to have all my work go through the quality assurance team, right? That's something usually that when you come out of your training, you do for a week until they're satisfied that you're doing a good job. 2 years, I was carrying my fucking piles of paper upstairs, doing the walk of fucking shame every single day, solidifying my belief further that I would inevitably fuck things up. I had 4 disciplinaries at that company for the same mistake, which was stapling somebody's medical records to the wrong address. And eventually, I just left before I got sacked. I went and worked for my dad because he was the only person who'd have me. And I did it there as well. I used to fuck things up there, send orders to the wrong place. And this cycle just repeated on a loop and played out in every scenario, in all my jobs, at college, at uni, in teaching. I just always felt like I was incapable of learning and mastering a skill. And so my behaviours were influenced by that belief. So I wouldn't listen, I wouldn't try, I'd find a way to escape doing it. I wouldn't ever consider that actually maybe I could do it. And now that I have a business, I am consciously choosing to rewire that belief so that I can learn skills that I need to make sure it's successful. Because in the early days of a business, as I'm sure lots of you listening know, you're doing fucking everything yourself. Like there's nobody doing the other roles. It's all you. So I didn't start my YouTube channel for 2 years because I didn't think that I was capable of learning how you edit a video. I expected that I would not be able to learn that. Do you know how long it took me to actually learn that skill once I expected to be a fast learner and expected for it to be easy for me? 25 minutes. 2 years I waited to start this YouTube channel and it took me 25 minutes. I watched a YouTube video and voila, that obstacle was gone. I incorporate study into my life now because I've realised now that I enjoy learning things I'm interested in. But if you'd have met me at 25, that version of me would have shown her ass on the town hall steps before believing that in 10 years' time, I'd be running my own business, podcasting to people in 117 countries. Oh, it's 117 today, the episode. And studying books on investing and this. It's and obviously really deep concepts like the law of assumption. I mean, I probably showed my ass on town hall steps anyway at some point regardless because I had some really good nights out in Bolton back then. But I was a girl who firmly believed that it was really hard for her to learn a new skill and that she would inevitably fuck it up. And I proved that over and over and over again until I changed my expectation and then I got a whole different result and I'm getting a whole different result. So think about where you are expecting something that doesn't serve you. Are you expecting that you can't learn? Are you expecting that you'll fuck up? Are you expecting that something's too hard for you? Are you expecting that exercise will be painful and miserable? That's another one that I rewired a few years ago about walking. I used to hate walking. Now I love walking. I changed it so that my expectations saw it as a reward. And it's like a reward, like Donald Trump. Are you expecting that you are always skint? Are you expecting that you're shit with technology? Are you expecting that you're not creative? Are you expecting that you won't get that role that you'd love because you're too old or because you're a woman or because you're not qualified enough? No one has given me a qualification in podcasting, babe, and yet here we fucking are. And then think about this. How is that expectation, or we could call it an assumption, affecting your subconsciously driven behaviours, your performance? How are those behaviours creating outcomes that you don't desire? Is it making you play small? Is it keeping you stuck in a negative loop that you don't want to be in? Is it driving you to do things like skip your workout or something like that? Is it making you have negative behaviours with money? Think about it. No one is immune to this, including me. Like, there is nothing that I talk about that I am immune to. It's a constant process of working on yourself. But we are all being driven by our subconscious, and that subconscious is taking orders from what you are expecting or assuming. So your beliefs are influencing your performance. If athletes expect to perform well in a competition, they do. The confidence boosts, they have better concentration, and they have a better performance. So like a runner, for example, believes that they can win a race, they will push harder, they will focus more, they will train better, so they'll get a better outcome because they believe, they expect that it's going to happen. So they behave, oh, fuck me, who now? My dad, hang on. He was asking me if I wanted to go for my dinner. So I'm going for my dinner and I'll be back very soon. I'm going to drag my weary ass out of bed, put my hair in a very tight bobble to cover the grease, and I'll be back shortly. You won't even know I've been gone. I'm back, guys. I've had my dinner. I feel much better for leaving the house. It was absolutely delicious. And I was just talking about how the runner will win the race because of their behaviours being influenced by their expectations. Same with anything in any area. Like if you're planning on doing some public speaking, for example, if that person believes and expects that the speech is going to be great and that it's going to go down well, then they are much less likely to experience anxiety about it, and therefore they're going to be more focused, more calm, and they'll be able to deliver that presentation more effectively, so they'll get a better outcome. And the opposite happens depending on the expectation. If they're expecting to fail or mess up the words, or they're just going to make a pig's ear of it, and they're making like that. Does everybody know what that means, make a pig's ear out of it? I've become very aware of the phrases that I use recently, since my dad pointed out about the Guy Fawkes night, that not everybody is always going to know what I'm talking about. A pig's ear means like a bollocks of it, like you've messed it up. So if they're expecting that, then what's going to happen is they're going to get nervous, they're going to react badly, the body will start like filling with adrenaline, etc., and so they'll get a different outcome. I have been all right at public speaking in general. It's not something that I've ever been particularly afraid of. But going back to that belief that I had, that expectation that it would be hard for me to learn, in my uni days, I would specifically, not in a negative way, just like as a coping strategy to get around this issue, I would target a bunch of like nerdy looking academic types in my class, and I would trade them off that if they did all the work and they did the research and put the presentation together and did all that shit that I felt like I couldn't do, because that was the learning, the hard bit, then I would present it on my own. Well, they were all absolutely fucking thrilled with that, because they obviously had expectations that they were going to fuck up the presentation, so they were scared, they were nervous about it. And I remember still turning up at 4:00 in the afternoon in my first year of uni, drunk as a mop, really, from waiting in the student union bar all day, because it was only at 4:00 in the afternoon, whacking a USB that somebody had given me from this group of academics into the laptop, and very confidently presenting some slides that I had never seen before in my life. I had no idea what was coming next. I was just as surprised as everybody else in the classroom. And I clicked through those slides, and at the end, the head of year clapped. She praised me, blew smoke up my ass for what, is that another phrase? Blew smoke up my ass? Said I'd done a good job for what, how well I'd done at this presentation, because I expected that it was going to go swimmingly, and so it did. Even though I believed that I was incapable of actually doing the research and the learning to put this presentation together, so I palmed that off onto somebody else who was better at that, I believed that it was going to be fantastic, because I knew that I was really good at winging it, as I'd spent a lot of time doing that. So that impacted the outcome. Really, I shouldn't have done well at that. I was drunk and I was very unprepared. but I did because I expected it. So that is the first part of the expectation effect. It's the influence of your beliefs and your expectations on your performance, on your behaviour. So the second aspect, and we're on 25 minutes, I feel like this could have been a part 2, guys, but we're going to keep going, so you might want to double time me. So the second aspect of the expectation effect is about perception and experience. So this part is about how your expectations of the world and your life and the 3D have an impact on how you actually perceive those things. So your expectations on your perception of things, and in turn how you actually experience them. So an easy way to see this and understand it is think about whether you consider yourself and the people around you, can think about different people, are you or are they a glass half full or a glass half empty sort of person? It's exactly the same glass. The experience is different because of the perception of it, but it's exactly the same glass. So I'm going to give you a little made up real life example of what this might look like if it was playing out, and the importance of having good expectations of how things are going to go. So let's take 2 imaginary friends. We're going to call them Julie and Mooley. All right? Don't ask me why, Julie and Mooley. So they're going to spend the day together, and let's pretend that they are going to the zoo for a day, like a day out, and they're driving there in the same car, and they're seeing the same animals, and they're eating at the same cafe, and they visit the same gift shop. And let's say that Julie and Mooley have both got husbands. So imagine that before they set off, each of the separate husbands both say, "Are you looking forward to your day out with Julie or Mooley?" And Julie, who's a glass half full kind of gal, says, "I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great day." Whereas Mooley says, I'm absolutely dreading it. It's going to be awful. So they've got different expectations of what they're going to experience. So they're going to look at it through different lenses. They're going to perceive it differently. So then, after the day out, Julie and Mooley walk back into their houses after the day at the zoo, and both their husbands ask them, "How was your day?" And Julie, the glass half full gal, she says, "Oh, it was absolutely fantastic to spend the day with Mooley. It was busy on the road, so we shared a packet of sweets in the car, we listened to the radio, we had a dance, it played really good songs. There were some gorgeous autumn trees on the way there. We had an ice cream that was delicious. I saw the giraffes and I got to feed them. The cafe had the most beautiful painting up in there. I couldn't take my eyes off it. The coffee, exquisite, 10 out of 10. It rained a bit, but we didn't even notice it because we were having such a lovely day. The otters were having a ball in the rain, and I bought this really nice, cute journal from the gift shop as a reminder of a day out with Mooley. £4, absolute bargain. And now I can make notes in it when I listen to Sophie's next podcast. It was a brilliant day. Can't bloody wait to go again. All right. So that is Julie's recount of the day. Mooley, on the other hand, glass half empty kind of gal. She says it was absolutely shite. Back to back on the roads. We were sat in traffic, queue of absolute dickheads. I had an ice cream that gave me toothache all day. A giraffe was slathered on my new fucking coat. We went for dinner in this cafe and I had a dry as fuck jacket potato. It pissed down all day, so we couldn't enjoy it at all. And then we went to the gift shop and Julie paid £4 for this wanky little journal to write about that happy clappy podcaster that she's always harping on about. Outrageous. I'm never going to go again. So they've both had exactly the same day, have Julie and Mooley, but because they both set off before they even got there, having very different expectations of how the day was going to go, they both perceived it completely differently, and so they created for themselves very different experiences of that day. And that is the second aspect of the expectation effect, which is your perception and your experience. Something else that plays a huge part in this bit is something called the placebo effect, which I'm sure lots of you have heard of, and if you've not, I'm so excited for you because it's absolutely amazing. And I also want to talk to you about that, but I've decided, as we're already on half an hour, I'm not going to pack it into this episode. So what I'll do is I will make a YouTube video about that part, about the placebo effect, and I'll post it over there. So come and subscribe to my channel. Just click the link in the show notes or search for Empire State with Sophie Waddington and you'll find me there. So anyway, the third and final aspect of the expectation effect is feedback loops. Feedback loops are when we believe something, we expect it, we create proof of it in the 3D, and that proof deepens that initial belief. So it goes belief, then it goes, oh fucking hell, I forgot now, expectation, then it goes proof, and then it goes back around. Have I got that right? Yeah, I have. Right. So if you think back to the example about Ron's exam paper, that broke his cycle and it created a new one. So for this, let's think of an example around health or specifically like weight loss or something. So let's say a person holds a belief that it is hard for them to lose weight. A lot of people hold that belief. So then they create expectations based on that belief. So that might look like I'm going to a slimming club. Don't do that. But let's imagine that they do. We'll call it schmotchers so we don't get sued. And they have a belief that it's hard for them to lose weight. So that creates a sense of discomfort, but then they try hard, so they make it hard for themselves. They sacrifice, they live off copper soups all week, they do ridiculous things like scooping the middle out of a fucking baguette. They eat like minimal amounts of food, and then at the weekend, the 380 points or sins or whatever the fuck they're called in Chewits and meringue nests, right? I'm speaking from experience here. And the first week, they lose £5, let's say. And then the schmotchers consultant says, I'm just letting you know that loss is going to slow down now. So now that person expects that next week they're still going to have to do the same stuff. They're still going to have to struggle. They're still going to have to sacrifice. But now they're only going to have a very slow weight loss. So they do. Then the week after, they're getting fucking sick to the back teeth of copper soups. So, I don't know, they eat a multi-pack of 12s, let's say. And then because they've broken the rules of this bollocks plan, they then solidify this belief and create expectations that it's hard to lose weight again. So it drives them subconsciously to eat a Chinese, 6 pints of lager and 3/4 of a Black Forest Gateau. So they then expect that they're going to have gained £4, so they do, and they see evidence of that belief that it's hard to lose weight, and round and round and round we fucking go. So it's this never-ending feedback loop of believing something, expecting something, experiencing something, and deepening that belief again. So that is a feedback loop. Rather than a loop, in my mind, I see that more like a spiral, because and we all use that term, like I'm spiralling out of control, or you're spiralling upwards, or whatever it is. When you're going round in that loop over and over again, whatever it relates to, could be something totally different to health, a completely different area of life, but the spiral is getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's what happens. Now, if the spiral is quite new or it's shallow, that feedback loop is quite, new, it's pretty easy to break. If it's deeper, sometimes you need a bit of an interruption or a circuit breaker. We'll talk about that in another episode. So something like having somebody tell you that you've got incredible test results. That was like a circuit breaker that put Ron onto a new feedback loop. Honestly, there is so much to say on this topic, but I've been here for 35 minutes. So I could talk about this all fucking day, but I've kept you for quite long enough. You've had more than enough interruptions, sneezing, phone calls, text messages, all sorts of things. So I'm going to leave you with some questions that you can journal on if you've enjoyed this episode. Remembering that this is just law of assumption. It's just I'm presenting it to you today in the form of the expectation effect, which is a little bit more scientifically proven, I suppose. So think about these questions. Where in my life am I expecting undesired outcomes due to my negative expectations? So where am I? You don't even need to make it that long. You can shorten that to, where in my life am I expecting undesired outcomes? The next question is, how are those negative expectations shaping my own subconscious behaviours? So you'll be able to see that. So for example, like going back to the schmeichmochers one, is it that because you have a belief, an expectation that it's going to be hard to lose weight, that when you do one thing that breaks a certain set of rules, say in this like eating plan that you might be on, that forces you to binge eat? Like, that's one that I've had a million fucking times. So the next one is, in what ways do my expectations influence my perception of my day-to-day experiences? So are you, basically that means, are you a glass half full or a glass half empty type of person? How are you experiencing and perceiving your day-to-day life? Is it through negative expectations or positive ones? And how can you sort that out? And then the final one that I've got for you is, can you identify any feedback loops in your life that are reinforcing those expectations? So look for spirals where something's got deeper and deeper and deeper over time and your belief is getting more and more solidified. And think of some ways that you can interrupt that pattern, because there are ways that you can do that. But like I said, we just simply haven't got fucking time to keep talking today. So yeah, have a think about those questions. I do apologise that I feel like I've been a little bit rambly today because I'm a bit out of sorts. But hopefully you'll forgive me. Let me know as well. I posted on my Instagram stories before saying, do you prefer the unfiltered version of these podcasts where I just leave everything in and I keep talking, or would you rather me start editing them so that they are more polished? I'm not going to say polished, I'm going to say slightly more polished. Let me know. Give me some feedback, because it's you guys that are listening to it. So I will follow your lead. I won't be offended, I promise. And finally, I would be thrilled if you would come and subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave me a review. And I hope that you have a wonderful week. I'll speak to you soon.